Now that we've finished the classic era of Star Wars games, we're moving on to the prequel era. Now, let me again clarify, this doesn't mean we're only playing games set during the prequel films, but rather all of the games that were being released around the time of these films. And for me personally, this will be the most nostalgic era of Star Wars gaming. I imagine it will be for a lot of you watching as well. We have a lot of amazing, I guess now classics that we'll be revisiting, and some that I'll be playing for the first time ever. So strap in.
Did he say strap in or strap on?
Phantom Menace was one of the most hyped times to be a Star Wars fan, with the first film since 1983 coming out, and people hadn't even considered the possibility that it might not be good.
What if the movie sucks?
Ever since Phantom Menace, a new level of anxiety existed within Star Wars fans, always living with the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the next project won't be as good as they hoped. Phantom Menace did divide the fandom, but you can't deny the fact that merchandising was next level. There was Jar Jar everything, books, toys, Legos, and of course, video games. Phantom Menace had several video games released on it alone. The first being Phantom Menace, released on the PS1 and Windows, meant to retell the entire events of the film from start to finish. And this game is pretty infamous. This title is a tank-controlled beast, and it's not as fluent as Resident Evil. I played this game a few times in my youth, but I only beat it once before, so let's give it another shot. It opens at the beginning of the film with the opening crawl, and decent CG cutscenes for the time. You start as Obi-Wan, and this game is indeed famous for the fact that you can kill anything, and anyone. No one is safe.
Help me! Please! Someone! Help me!
The controls are pretty clunky, but the real difficulty comes in the combat. It's not great. It feels like you're just swinging the lightsaber around like a madman hoping to get a kill. You also have little in your defense. The first few stages are pretty linear. You go around looking for heals and weapons, and then you'll be on the swamps of Naboo still playing Obi-Wan. This level kinda sucks. Jar Jar. Yes, I know, we all hate Jar Jar, let's just tough this out. And, wait, Jar Jar, I don't think that's a good... Holy shit! We make it to the Gungan city and enter Gungan slaughter mode. Is that Cleveland Brown Jr.?
Boss Nasa talking with the Outlanders, but Jar Jar waits here.
This mission is also pretty linear and compact. It still somehow feels very tedious. And just in case I haven't made this apparent, this game isn't great, but I am loving it. I'm having a great time with it right now. That might be a little bit of the bourbon, but I'm having a great time with this game. It's still very impressive how much of the movie is actually recreated in these cutscenes, especially when the movie hadn't even come out yet, and the developers had limited assets of the film to work with. Theed sucks. You have to navigate the city with several aggressive clankers after you in every corner. And tanks! There's this really bizarre side mission where this woman asks you to find her son. Thankfully, he's right next to her. I'm gonna kill him. And there's no consequences for this. There is no consequence for this whatsoever. This game is diabolical. Obi-Wan has had enough of this shit. Getting to the hangar is terrifying. Now luckily you can save at any point in the mission, and I was reloading that save quite a bit just trying to get lucky shots in here because I was at 1 HP. Once we make it to Tatooine, we play as Qui-Gon, and right off the bat we're attacked by Tusken Raiders. We travel Mos Espa, walk around a bit asking to find Watto. This leads to actually meeting Anakin and his mother first. Anakin brings us to Watto, who, like the movie, won't sell us the ship parts we need. So, guess what? Time to go trading. Yeah, there's some RNG involved here too from my research, because I was bumbling around on this section. Watto gives you a random part by trade, which results in changing up how you get the other parts. During this time, you meet this distraught mom whose son has been put to slave labor. Let's go free the little rascal. Oh, what the hell is that? It's like a Wookiee slept with a bantha. You can actually cheese this boss by standing on the cages or stairs, until he chases you. After freeing the kid, we get some of the parts we need, and do more annoying trading. Once we have everything, we give it to Anakin, Then we meet this Twi'lek lady of Jabba's who tells us he's willing to invest in our bet for the pod race. Well, that sounds mighty generous. How is it we always end up in a pit with this slug? Jabba's champion here is a unfair beast, but I learned you can actually just trap him in the entrance. Yeah, take that. Going to give Anakin a pep talk leads us to a wild goose chase with this asshole who stole whatever part it was that Anakin needed for his pod racer. Eventually leading us to a boss fight that we pretty much solved this like the NES Empire game. Now it's time for the pod race. Sorry kids, if you want to do that part of the game, you gotta go buy the N64 or Dreamcast pod racer game. Instead we get this.
Hurry, Master Anakin!
Skywalker pulls free, so Bomba has crashed!
Skywalker wins!
Nifty. Now you probably think the next stage is going to have us back at Theed. We are actually playing Panaka trying to save the queen from these kidnappers on Coruscant. My game also bugged out here. The queen was supposed to be kidnapped, but instead she just kept following me down this pit. I thought maybe the chain of events would fix themselves, but no, I had to restart the whole damn level over again. We do get a little exploration of underground Coruscant, which is a pretty cool idea. We save the queen, do this weird puzzle, and meet up with Papa Palpatine as if nothing happened. Now back to Theed. The last two stages really wanted to emulate the film by having the player alternate between Obi-Wan and Padme. And no, we don't see Anakin's adventures here. Now for the first part of this, Panaka and the other Naboo are completely useless. I actually had to restart the level because they lost too much health and Panaka kept dying. Thanks. The Obi-Wan sections have you fighting against Maul. It's not as exciting as Dark Forces 2. Pretty much just smacking and hoping he doesn't kill you first. Bam, 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 bam.
The choice is yours, my Padawan left.
The choice is mine? Alright, I'll take him then. Yeah, of course. The last level, Panaka is a lot more useful, in fact does most of the work for me this time. It's pretty linear in the palace, you just have to grab some pass cards. They aren't too hard to find. Eventually you make it to the throne room with Newt Gunray, who sounds...
Have you finally decided to sign the treaty?
At least it's not as offensive as the movie. Oh, that was underwhelming. The Obi-Wan section was a jumping nightmare. I was making a save damn near every jump, and it's much more of a labyrinth here than it is in the palace, that's for sure. We finally catch up with Qui-Gon and... there it is. Now for the infamous Darth Maul boss. I've heard you can just force push him to send him down the pit, but he's not budging for me. The Maul boss would be a nightmare if it weren't for having some health packs here. Oh, I guess someone's not getting a return in Clone Wars. And that's it. Ending cutscene. The game is still clunky as hell, incredibly linear, but somehow still felt like a maze, and I enjoyed every damn second of it. I really love this game. It's not perfect by any means, and objectively it's not very good. It's the enjoyable kind of bad for me. Plus, it's just really funny. You can still play this bad boy on modern PlayStation consoles. I recommend checking it out if you see it for sale or something. Oh yeah, there's this cool music video too. The quality is not great, but it's got some behind the scenes, movie clips, and Duel of Fates, so that's awesome. Next up is Star Wars Racer, which was released originally on the N64 the same day as the film, but was eventually released on PC and Sega Dreamcast. The N64 version is incredible, especially with the expansion pack that allows you to play at a higher resolution, just like Rogue Squadron. Although this version won't be giving you all the content, but it did have this neat feature where you could use a code to use 2 controllers at once to steer. I guess that's a flex. And it also had split screen, which PC didn't. The PC and Dreamcast version had slightly better visuals, but the biggest addition was the pre-rendered cutscenes. There's an incredibly impressive opening sequence reminiscent of the famous Boonta Eve race from the film, which will technically be the opening and ending of the game. It's actually impressive that every planet that has a track on here gets its own special CG intro. The game was eventually remastered and re-released for all modern systems, with the Switch actually having motion controls available to it. We'll be playing this mostly on the PS5 as there's not much difference outside of some clearer visuals and audio. Plus it gives me reason to go for plat. There's several game modes available, but the tournament mode is the big one. Here you start with 3 tournaments, each with having 7 races. You can pick several characters from the start, many familiar faces from Phantom Menace, and more will be unlocked upon completing stages. The opening race is Tatooine. It faithfully recreates the environment from the film, but not as much as the later one. The controls are simple. You got your acceleration, your brakes, your boost. That can blow up your pod race if you overdo it. You can also tilt using the right stick. The races have different difficulties, and I learned that a little bit too late, resulting in me having to start over to get a trophy. You can set it to the hardest difficulty for the highest reward. You see, there's an upgrade feature where you can buy parts from Watto. Unfortunately, the game doesn't give you an abundance of money, so you gotta be kind of strategic if you want to get plat, which requires you to get the best of every upgrade. The first step is to max out your pit droids. Look at them go, little guys. After completing several races, we can start getting some discounts from Watto's junkyard. Saving money to get the best parts from Watto's junkyard and letting the droids repair them is a very efficient strategy. I had maxed out my racer before even finishing the third tournament, and after you win all of the races, you unlock 4 additional ones. These can be a little tricky, especially this one where it's insanely easy to fall off the main track and you lose your position. This was the only one I had to actually reset twice. Upon beating the final race, you finally unlock Sebulba, and you get a 10-minute credit section. And to my knowledge, I could not skip it. The last couple trophies are related to Sebulba having you play around with his cheating pod, which shoots flames out that I guess does damage? I don't know, but we got plat. Racer is still insanely fun today and a great party game. Now, while most of the ports weren't very different, there was one that certainly stands out. The Game Boy Color version of Racer with Rumble, and it sure does work. This is a top-view racing game, pretty generic for Nintendo. You go against one other racer on several planets from the main game, each with different stages. And, yeah, it's Game Boy. Next up is Gungan Frontier from Lucas Learning. The next several video games are all educational, which means I don't really know if they qualify or if they should qualify. And also, many of them don't work on modern computers or have modern support. Case in point with this one. Now, I did get this one to work, Yoda's Challenge Activity Center. This game has a bunch of different mini-games based off Phantom Menace properties. I certainly was playing this game a little tipsy with some friends, and we were having a time. You got shape matching to make characters or ships, choosing the right path for racing with Padme and Jar Jar, teaching C-3PO how to talk. Oh my god. This rhythm game and another rhythm game that has lyrics?
All but for Tatooine.
Oh boy. And this one. There is something immensely nostalgic about the style of this game. It reminds me greatly of those early learning games from this era, but this is not how I imagined my mid-20s. There are a lot of these types of games. Another similar one is Jar Jar's Activity Book. This Pit Droids game, which apparently was actually popular enough that it had an iOS port for some time. Another one of these with Anakin. It gets overwhelming. I think you get the general idea though. A lot of this is just part of Phantom Menace's gluttonous marketing. Well, in 2000, we did finally get another actual video game. Star Wars Jedi Power Battles. From a time when Mace Windu had a blue lightsaber, later fixed on the remaster actually. I vaguely remember playing this on the PS1 in my youth, and I remember it having a pretty mixed perception on release. But it seems fans have come back to this with a much more positive mindset, especially since the remaster. So let's see how this game holds up. So this title kinda covers Phantom Menace in a more arcade style. You get to choose one of several Jedi, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, Plo Koon, and Adi in the original PlayStation 1, with more available on the Dreamcast. Keep in mind this game came out when we only saw 2 of these characters in action. I will say that the character select was a lot cooler on the original, but since the remaster added more characters, they had to change it up. Now with Padme, Panaka, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Battle Droid? This game does seem to have been made with co-op in mind, which is good. Fortunately, my girlfriend hates platformers, so I couldn't really get to do co-op on this one. The levels are all different stages based on events from the film, opening with the Trade Federation ship. The gameplay isn't too clunky, although the attacks seem to stutter a bit, and sometimes the button combinations don't really register. And that's not a big deal. There's only 3 attack buttons and a jump button, and you can mix and match for combos. The more you play a character, the more you unlock combos for them. You also have a guard button which lets you reflect enemy blast and force abilities, which are okay. And the characters aren't just reskins either, they actually have pretty noticeable differences in their combos and fighting styles. It's kind of a mixture of side-scrollers incorporating platforming and hack and slash, beat 'em up aspects. You go around slicing up some clankers, do some jumps here and there, fight a boss, and then another boss. I love how the droids just straight up punch you in the face. The jumping in this game can be pretty temperamental. There are times when I was sure I made a jump, but did not. And vice versa. You get used to it though, and we'll find the later sections to be pretty easier once you adapt to the gameplay. I thought this game followed its own story, but it actually does follow the film. As I said before, all the stages are based off of moments from Phantom Menace, but also told in the same order as the movie. You escape the Tread Federation ship, go to the swamps of Naboo where you save Jar Jar, and then you go to Theed where you have to save Padme's handmaidens and drive a tank. This thing is indestructible. This almost feels like cheating. You then have to find Padme in the throne room, which took significantly less time than I thought it would. Afterwards, we're with Anakin post-pod race, bringing him to the Queen's ship. Even when playing as a different character, it seems we're meant to hear Qui-Gon's voice here.
Anakin, run! Tell them to take off!
Which makes sense, since this would be his moment of the film, after all. Darth Maul time! Well, it's better than the Phantom Menace game, at least. Time for Coruscant. But we can't just have a level on politics, can we? Nah, we gotta fight this guy while bouncing on the tops of the city. Seriously, what is this guy's deal? Does he want to kidnap Padme? Probably. Now back to Naboo. Yeah, that'll get the Gungans to join our cause. Kick their asses. The next couple missions leading up to the finale are pretty unique. There's this one, where you speed through Theed on a speeder. Then there's this platformer level to reach the finale, which has you facing off against, you guessed it, Darth Maul. Now Maul was kicking my ass at first, until I learned the ultimate strat to beat him. Spam him with a neutral attack. Looks like no spin-off for you on this one either. There are several minigame style missions available post-game. These missions originally were unlocked with special conditions, but the remaster decided to just let you have everything from the get-go. This game does have insane replayability with all of its characters and play modes, even got a versus mode. Jedi Power Battles is actually really cool, and I'm ashamed that I slept on this one. There was a Game Boy Advance Game Boy Advance port. Really surprised it's not Game Boy Color. Well, let's check it out. This is very faithful, actually. You get 3 playable characters this time at start, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Mace, Darth Maul being the unlockable. Honestly, this makes a pretty decent portable Phantom Menace game. I mean that in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith all had Game Boy games, and this is pretty much your Phantom Menace equivalent. You play through the same stages of the original. Obviously the controls have been simplified for the 2 buttons of the Game Boy, but it's very competent. Really cool Game Boy conversion, and I've definitely seen worse. The next game is Star Wars Force Commander, which very surprisingly does not have any sort of modern support. This is a real-time strategy game, kind of like Rebellion, but this time with more focus on the set narrative. A really damn interesting one too, I might add. I was concerned I wouldn't be able to get this game to run, but luckily there's a good fan base for this game. Unfortunately, the cutscenes don't seem to work very well. The menu music does go pretty hard here. We got a heavy rendition of the Imperial March. Oh, that's right, it's 2000 now. Well, let's open up the game. The main campaign has you playing as Ben Tantor, a young Imperial officer who commands troops. If you know these types of games, this should look pretty familiar to you. It actually looks really good for the time. I'm not sure if any outside work was done with this version I'm using or not. I don't think so though. The opening stage has you leading a group of sand troopers sent to Tatooine in the opening of A New Hope. It takes about 10 minutes for this guy to explain the camera controls to you as well as the basic controls. The music in this game is something else. This has got to be one of my favorite soundtracks so far. Walking the desert had me bumping.
Look, sir. Droid.
Look, a penny!
As the game progresses, it gets into the real meat, calling in pieces of your base as well as troops and walkers. You gotta be smart with your resources or you'll just be getting wasted. I definitely spent way too much time on some of these levels. As you play further in the game, it becomes more fun with the stuff you unlock, calling in TIE fighters, walkers. You start to really feel indestructible and it's so much fun. Although the game doesn't go easy on you. I was pulling some hairs on this one. The story focuses on 2 brothers in the Empire. You spend most of the game commanding the younger brother on the ground, until the younger brother learns that the Empire, well, killed their parents, or their dad. This leads to his imprisonment and Bran eventually switching sides to the rebels. It's actually rather clever how the game has you playing through the film's events while enjoying several battles between the famous moments. The game gets really interesting when you actually capture Luke Skywalker. After being asked to kill at a refugee camp, Bran refuses and is court-martialed. This leads to a pretty interesting escape mission. We are officially on the side of the rebels. The Alliance campaign has you mostly redeeming Bran's sins, by going to previous maps again, but eventually it does end up on Endor, leading the main gang, Luke, Leia, Han, and even C-3PO and R2. And after the film events from Return of the Jedi, we go to Coruscant to liberate it from the Empire by taking over the Imperial Palace. This game is awesome. I adored it from start to finish and put an unhealthy amount of hours into it. I really cannot believe that this game has not had any sort of modern re-release. I could imagine it doing pretty damn well. This is a gem and deserves to be checked out. After Force Commander, there are even more learning games. Jabba Math. Jabba Math. Alright, well that was an experience.
It'll take more than that to beat Boba.
The game following is quite needed after all of these educational games. Star Wars Demolition. Ah, yes, 2000. I've heard about this game quite a bit, but this is my first time playing it. The game is as the title promises. You pick a character, and you blow shit up. That's essentially it. That's the core of the game. Even the game developers said that they just wanted to make something that was fun. It also feels like a party game, though not as much fun playing by yourself. You could pick from characters and vehicles with a decent range of maps, and yeah, Gauntlet. You got battles, tournaments, hunt a droid. It's a fun game for sure, but that's pretty much it. Next up is Obi-Wan's Adventure for the Game Boy Color. Oh boy. This game covers Phantom Menace from Obi-Wan's perspective. So like what, 20 minutes of the movie? It's certainly Game Boy Color. It looks decent and plays decent. You got a lightsaber, a blaster, as well as the Force, which... why does his arm look like that? Boy, look at those Game Boyified stills from the movie. The game takes less than an hour to beat. You play a couple stages on the Trade Federation ship, the swamps of Naboo, Coruscant stage again, and back to Naboo, and then Darth Maul. And all of the enemies are not threatening. You can just smack them with your saber and go through linear paths to beat the game. Yeah, it's harmless, I guess. It's not as bad as Yoda Stories by any means, but it's not really anything to write home about. It's not as good as the Game Boy port of Jedi Power Battles, but that's also because that was for Game Boy Advance. But this is a competent enough game for Game Boy Color, I think. Decent enough for some short road trips. And we have yet another Phantom Menace based game, except this one brings us back to the N64. From the same team that brought you Rogue Squadron brings you Rogue Squadron Phantom Menace Edition. I mean, Battle for Naboo. So basically, imagine Rogue Squadron on the N64, but restricted exclusively to the Phantom Menace film. Yeah, I know, I'm confused too. The game opens with the invasion of Theed. You play as this Lieutenant Sykes as he fights against the Trade Federation's occupation. This actually has us playing the opening of the game on land with these speeders and tanks, going through the streets of Theed, blasting against droid tanks and stabs. Eventually, we finally get the police version of a Naboo starfighter. Okay. There we go, there's the real thing. The game's story mode is basically just go around, blow stuff up, and save the Naboo from the droid's invasion. That includes blowing up this thing in space, kind of an annoying level, liberating prison camps, and protecting civvies. During which we save Borvo the Hutt, who is just chilling in Naboo doing his dirty side gigs, I guess. He offers some help. Wow, I bet he totally won't betray us in the end. And he killed our captain. We beat Borvo and move back onto the Trade Federation. I suppose this is an interesting perspective to get, to actually see what was going on in Naboo during all the main character stuff in the film. The film made it seem like there was a lot less rebellion actually going on. Eventually it does catch up to the end battle present in the film. This includes participating in the final space battle. Basically doing shenanigans while Anakin blows up the Trade Federation ship and takes all the credit. As is tradition with Factor 5 games, there are several bonus missions and vehicles. And this one actually introduced audio commentary for missions, which is kind of neat. One of those bonus missions includes chasing Darth Maul down the streets of Coruscant and blowing him up. Or you can actually play as Maul and a Sith infiltrator and go around killing the Naboo. I gotta be entirely honest, I didn't enjoy this one as much as the first Rogue Squadron. And it's not to say that it's a bad game, because it's not a bad game. It's a very good game, but it just feels more limited compared to everything that we got in the first Rogue Squadron. The vehicle catalog wasn't super interesting, and truthfully I'm not a huge fan of the land sections. That said, it is impressive that they were able to make a whole game off of that. Just the Naboo side of Phantom Menace. That is really damn cool that they could do that. Now the next game is, well, the same thing. Star Wars Starfighter. This game was released on the new fancy smancy PS2, being the first Star Wars game of the 6th generation of consoles. This game eventually did get released on the Xbox, called the Special Edition. I think this is actually a good time to point out that LucasArts was certainly showing more love towards Microsoft in this era. While the PS2 and GameCube did have a few exclusives, Xbox had probably the best catalog of Star Wars games. Now, I didn't have an OG Xbox growing up, and I was pretty jealous of that, but luckily enough I did get to play some of these on PC growing up. I'll detail this more as we go into specific games, but we can see it here in Starfighter 2, being the first game of the system, and already being sold as the superior version. I had played this one on PC originally myself, and this is my first time ever playing the Xbox version, which states to have bonus levels, better 2-player modes, and Xbox optimized graphics. And let's go ahead and pop this bad boy into the R2 360. And damn it. Okay. Like Battle for Naboo, this game is centered on Naboo pilots, at least in the beginning, during the Trade Federation's invasion. But it is much more fleshed out. The story follows 3 characters. The first is Reese, a fresh Naboo pilot. After his teacher is killed during an attack by the Trade Federation during a meeting with Queen Amidala, Reese is injured and left behind and found by Reddy. The story moves on to Vanna, who is helping the Trade Federation test some new weaponry, when her droid picks up a transmission about invading Naboo, which then makes her a target. During her escape, she discovers a droid factory. This information saves her from Nim, the third protagonist. This character is a pirate who isn't exactly a fan of the Trade Federation. So already we have 3 pretty different and pretty interesting characters. The main campaign alternates between all 3 of them with their own ships that have their own unique abilities. My personal favorite is Nim's. It sure packs a hell of a punch. Nim experiences some personal disdain after his friend is killed by the Trade Federation. With all 3 having a shared hatred, they team up, first destroying the droid factory, then moving on back to Naboo to help the Resistance. These missions are actually pretty interesting, ranging from blowing stuff up and protecting stuff. I suppose that's all the flight sims we've played so far, but at least the characters are fun and interesting. The CG cutscenes aren't super beautiful today, but considering the advancements in tech that we're seeing with what we've been playing beforehand, I think they're pretty impressive. They aren't overly long, but are good enough to give us that narrative, something for us to care about. The game ends in the climactic space battle at the end of Phantom Menace, where Reese faces off against the mercenary who killed his master. This is the only mission in the game that pissed me off. It starts off incredibly simple, blowing up these communication dishes and then fighting some droids. Then the boss himself shows up and he sucks. He has these tracking missiles that no matter where you go will go right in front of you and blow up. And they hurt. Not to mention all the droids trying to kill you while you're dodging. This was the only true stressful part of the game, but it was pretty satisfying when I finally beat it. The game itself is mildly stressful, but incredibly enjoyable. I'm gonna be honest, I'm surprised how much I enjoyed this game. I thought that I wasn't gonna be that into it. But the bonus missions were really cool too. I don't know if enough to warrant a whole console just to get a couple extra ones, but it's nice additional replayability to it. Although I feel the main story is already pretty replayable on its own, with a decently length story mode and bonus objectives to increase your challenge. To my surprise, a damn good game. Next up is another Phantom Menace game. Sorta. Star Wars Super Bombad Racing for the PS2. This game was actually developed by Lucas Learning and was meant to be a cute Mario Kart clone. So this is technically educational? I don't know where this one falls in the line. You got characters with these big head models. Anyone else get reminded of those old Star Wars McDonald's toys? Yeah, this is Phantom Menace Mario Kart. I don't know what to say about this one. It's playable, I guess. It's definitely not Racer. Not nearly as good as Racer, but it's also meant for a younger audience, so it does its job. The music's really fun. I'm sure there's someone out there who's made a 10-hour-long documentary about why this is the greatest Phantom Menace game ever made. I myself can't say that much about it. It has lots of modes and maps to race, and yeah, neat. Next up is Galactic Battlegrounds. I've been excitedly anticipating this one. This is another real-time strategy game like Force Commander, this time with prequels content, as well as original trilogy. And this game uses the Genie engine, famously used for the Age of Empires series. So that's basically what this is, Age of Empires Star Wars. The game has several campaigns going through the original trilogy and Phantom Menace, as well as an expansion that we'll talk about later. The base game opens with a tutorial campaign. Here, Qui-Gon berates me, as he teaches me how to run a Wookiee labor camp. Pretty peaceful, actually. The first campaign has us playing as the Trade Federation invading Naboo. Yeah, nice change of pace to actually be the bad guys this time. You go around, command some droids, and blow some stuff up. You even get to use Darth Maul to slaughter some Gungans.
Forgotten me. What is you? Some kind of devil thing?
Damn. The first stage is pretty limited to what you can do. Not that much construction or anything cool like that yet. The gameplay overall is dependent on resources, unlike Force Commander, where you can create workers to go out and get resources for your civs while you have your troops out fighting or defending. After conquering the Gungans, the next campaign lets us play the Gungan side.
Many years in the misty past, Misa ancestor Gallo was boss of a small, peaceful village called Otto Sanctuary.
Shit, I don't want to do this. Alright, that's enough of that. Let's get into the OG trilogy stuff. First, we have the Empire. Vader is pissed off about the destruction of the Death Star, and is now on a hell-bent mission for revenge. I love these horribly photoshopped images. After venting out some anger on the rebels for a few missions, we move on to the Battle of Hoth, which is technically the end of the Imperial campaign outside of some bonus missions. My favorite is the Forest Moon of Endor. This time, we're on the defense. You know what? I don't think we have enough here. I think we could use some extra firepower. How about the Death Star? Boom. And the Empire wins. Thanks for narrating, Mara Jade, I assume. Let's try out the Rebels side. So Leia's campaign kinda just feels like one of those expanded universe novels. She meets up with this old Jedi Master who's gonna pop up in the expansion. He's looking for this old Jedi artifact. And then Vader kills him. Years later, Luke and Leia team up to get the shards of that artifact, and I don't know, this campaign just didn't really grip me that much. Now you do get to play some famous moments like Hoth and Endor. The last campaign is Chewie's, where he returns home to Kashyyyk after Return of the Jedi. Oh, they actually made a level for the holiday special.
You're like family to me.
The campaign has you guiding Han and Chewie as they fight to liberate Kashyyyk from the remnants of the Empire and Todarians. As I briefly mentioned before, there was also a major expansion pack released a year later called Clone Campaigns. This adds elements from Attack of the Clones into the game, as well as 2 whole campaigns from both sides of the war. The Republic shows the early days of the war, starting on Geonosis, and then following Jedi Ichu, who was in Leia's campaign. And the Separatist side has you playing as Severance, under Dooku's command, pretty much at odds with Ichu and his fall to the dark side. The addition of the Clone Army was a huge deal, even more so than the story modes added in. It was a new concept at the canon at this point. We knew what the Clone Wars was from a single line in A New Hope, but now we have something tangible to latch onto. Outside of the main story, you have several play modes that will give you hours of gameplay. I would especially be interested in multiplayer, but setting this up is a bitch and a half. I don't necessarily know if I like this game as much as Force Commander, which is weird considering how much I was looking forward to this one. And it's not a bad game by any means, don't get me wrong. It's a really damn good one, especially for people who like these types of Civ, Age of Empire type games. These would be right up your alley. I definitely dumped a lot of hours into this myself, but even more so, playing these games really got me excited to play Empire at War. But we've got a little bit of time before that one. Alright, it's finally time. One of my favorite video games ever made, not just Star Wars games, my favorite video games ever made, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader for the GameCube. I have deeply personal connections with this game, not to force a nostalgia trip after a particular storm in the Gulf Coast destroyed my home and town. During the reconstruction, there wasn't much to do and living conditions weren't incredible. I still don't know how to this day my parents were able to get me a GameCube, and I had 3 games for it. Lego Star Wars, Mario Party 7, and this one. The amount of hours I poured into this game during that time. This game means a lot to me. I am very excited to revisit it because truthfully, I haven't played this game in a couple years. The game was essentially a launch title for the GameCube and really meant to showcase the gaming power that it had. And what a showcase it was. Compared to Factor 5's previous games, the graphics are just... I still think it looks phenomenal to this day. And the gameplay is smooth as butter. Especially with the GameCube controller. Yeah, we're playing this one on the official hardware. It opens with a training level on Tatooine. It's pretty neat. Mostly just flying around, looking for references, getting a handle of the controls. The real opening of the game is the Death Star attack. Once you enter the level, you can walk around the hangar and look at all the relevant crafts, which is really cool. The opening level of the Death Star run is still, I think, the definitive video game experience for it. And we played this several times now through different games. But this one, this is just it. I still remember this level like the back of my hand. And getting that gold is still a pain in the ass. Ooh. On its own, it's not a very difficult level, but it does start the game pretty damn strong. Afterwards, the story has us escorting the rebels to a new safe haven. This introduces the vehicle switch mechanic in game. This was incorporated from Battle of Naboo as well. And then we get the Battle of Hoth as the third level, another amazing recreation. From playing as the speeders, blowing up AT-STs and wrapping the legs around the AT-ATs, having to protect all of the escaping transports off the planet. The rest of the game from this point is mostly from Wedge's perspective, pulling off several different missions against the Empire. Using a Y-Wing as a bomber to save rebels from an Imperial prison, attacking a whole Star Destroyer, which I was very fond of this level personally. And then after knocking out the Star Destroyer, you have to go to land to help the rebels enter the Crash Destroyer. There's a mission where you infiltrate an Imperial base stealthily, and a mission on Bespin protecting tanks, so... yeah, I'm starting to see similarities here from the first game. If you recall, many of the missions from the first game were very similar to these. They're kind of like soft remakes, really. Some new additions include the finale of the game, a two-part attack on the second Death Star. From the opening space battle, that's a lot of ships. In the final run, playing as Wedge protecting Lando, then finally blowing up the big bastard again. And we get to see the special edition ending sequence with additional planets added. As is tradition, there's also bonus missions. You unlock these by earning gold medals. This time, it works in a point system where you can pick the bonus missions you want to unlock. First is from A New Hope, where the gang is escaping the Death Star, and you gotta mow down some TIE fighters. There's another with the Falcon flying through the asteroid field like the famous sequence from Empire Strikes Back. And then the real fun ones. We get to play as Vader himself. This cape looks a little rough though. Play Vader's perspective on the Death Star run. This is pretty diabolical. You can kill off the rebels and prevent their attack on the Death Star. I love it so much. It's so much fun to be the bad guys in these games. The next mission has you killing the rebels on Yavin. Talk about brutal. Outside of that, there's several great ships to choose from. The Falcon, the Slave One, the convertibles. This game proves to hold up today and still to be one of the best Star Wars games ever made. I can't really say the same for the next. Star Wars Obi-Wan for Xbox. I've heard not great things about this one, which also makes me interested in it. Now, after all these years, I can finally try it out. God damn it. Turns out this game is actually a nightmare to emulate. When I did eventually get the game to work, it lags like crazy, so that really put a damper on my experience for this one. Star Wars Obi-Wan is kind of like an advanced version of that Game Boy game we played, Obi-Wan Adventures, except significantly better and more fleshed out. The title opens with Obi-Wan right before Phantom Menace, going after this gang for the Jedi Council. As I was playing the game, I was concerned as to why none of these buttons attacked. Then I learned that in order to use your lightsaber, you have to use the right analog stick. Now, I was quite taken aback by this at first, but you know what? It actually kind of started to get fun for me. It grew on me, it really did. You can intermingle the Force with combos, reflect, block, parry, throw the damn thing. Look at it go! It's definitely not great, but it's functioning. The opening of the story has us going after this criminal gang, which ends up leading to a more threatening one. I do like the concept of this game, and I was actually thinking about that when I was reading the Phantom Menace novel. I really do want to see more stuff with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Making a game of Phantom Menace just from Obi-Wan's perspective isn't the strongest idea to work with unless you add some extra layers to it, like this. The quest sends Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to go save Plo Koon and Eeth Koth, fighting against Jinha, who are using these special ores to build weapons strong enough to go up against lightsabers. Then these ores will come up again and again and again in later games. After many levels, we finally beat these guys and escape. It's cool to see characters like Plo Koon being involved, since they haven't really been utilized in the canon yet. After certain stages, you'll get these duel sections where you face off against different Jedi Masters. Unfortunately, it really showcases how bland lightsaber dueling is in this game. Now, Chapter 3 of the story has us on the Trade Federation ship from the opening of Phantom Menace. It's a pretty wild step up from this. You basically follow Qui-Gon for several stages until finally stowing yourself into one of the landing craft to Naboo. The game skips all of the Jar Jar and Gungan stuff, going straight to Naboo in search for the Queen. Now, after saving the Queen, the story shifts to Qui-Gon and his adventures on Tatooine. So, what does Obi-Wan do here? Because we don't get to play Qui-Gon in this game. This game has the Queen's double being kidnapped by Tusken Raiders. So Obi-Wan has to go infiltrate an entire Tusken village and then duel with their chief. He must have been covered in grease or something, because you get lit on fire pretty damn easy over here.
I have defeated your war chief. Allow me to return to my ship safely with the Queen.
Okay. Afterwards, we return to Naboo for the attack against the Trade Federation, ending up on, yep, Darth Maul. Oh, it just goes right to here. Alright. Yikes! So, Obi-Wan is not a great game, but I didn't think it was that bad as I've always heard it being. I actually found some of it to be rather enjoyable. My experience is pretty ruined by the awful lag though. Playing it on the actual hardware is the best way to experience this game. The combat was pretty simple even with the additional weapons you can pick up, and they can get pretty boring fast. Missions can be tedious, and it might have been a stage or two too long. Platforming and the camera aren't ideal. It's got a lot of flaws, it really does, but it's far from being the worst game we've played so far. Next up is our last sorta Phantom Menace based game. Star Wars Racer Revenge. That's right, Racer got a sequel. I've never played this one before, so I'm excited to check it out. The title Revenge refers to Sebulba, who is pretty scorned about losing to Anakin. It takes place 8 years later as the two reunite for more competition. Anakin now older and a Jedi Padawan. I remember a series of books from my youth that covered Anakin's Padawan training between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, and one of those had him pod racing again. I'm not sure if that had any influence on this, and I cannot for the life of me remember the names of those books. This game is very similar to the first Racer. You've got quite an assortment of characters to choose from, many from the first game as well as plenty of new ones. And there's a lot of new stages available and new planets, which can be explored in the 4 tournaments available in the game. The controls and graphics obviously have been changed up a bit here, but the core is still there. You got your boost and temperature gauges to worry about, 3-lap races. The big difference here is that the game encourages you to knock out your opponents. You can actually crash out their racers. I didn't focus on this too much, but it is a pretty fun addition. That said, you only get 1 life this time on these races. Unlike the previous game, Watto's shop has also been greatly simplified. Here you can upgrade based on these sliders instead of going to the shop and picking out parts. Another fun addition is the added race commentary. Tom Kane making announcements during your race is pretty cool. I gotta say though, for a game based on Sebulba's revenge, it's kinda interesting how he's the final unlockable. You'd think he'd be the protag this time around. I will say a complaint I do have for this game is that it is far more simplified than the first one. While the changes for crashing out opponents is neat, the races themselves are a lot more simple. The stages aren't that intense, and you can't even really tilt your pod for any cool moves or obstacles. It's really a shame actually, it's very linear compared to the previous. This era had a lot of really cool racing games, and I think this one just doesn't stand out too much compared to those. It also only took a little over an hour to beat all of the main tournaments. Anakin meeting Jabba like this is very bizarre. Well, outside of the tournament, there are battle modes and different racers to use for replayability, but I don't know, this one just didn't feel as rewarding to play as the first. And again, it's not a bad game, it's still a very fun racer, it just doesn't stand out as much as the first one to me. Now, before moving on to all of the Attack of the Clones games in 2002, we've got one title in between. the continuation of a series from the classics era. Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast from the Dark Forces series for the Xbox, PC, and GameCube. I actually had this one on GameCube growing up, but didn't play it too much. I'm excited to finally sit down and play this one all the way through, especially after finally playing the first 2 Dark Forces. We will be looking at the PC version. The game opens 2 years after the previous. Kyle has given up the ways of the Force and chosen to continue his life as a mercenary, now in a relationship with Jan under the recruitment of Mon Mothma and the New Republic. This leads the duo to investigate an Imperial secret base where they learn of some experiments trying to contain the powers of the Force. The gameplay is a much more advanced take of the first game, and I did use some mods to put the game in widescreen, but what you're seeing here are the native textures. It's still a very beautiful game. I love the movement animation of the characters, and it makes mowing down stormtroopers feel more realistic. The aiming is kinda doo-doo though, but I feel like that's intentional. And I love all the little dialogues you can hear when you're sneaking around.
My last day on this ship.
Oh yeah, where you moving?
Sector 7 had an opening, so I applied.
Not bad. Should be a quiet last day.
You could choose to be stealthy, or you could play like me and just go crazy. The maps in this game are huge though. It took an hour for me just to clear both stages of this level. All the doors and the hallways, it's immensely impressive. Damn, why they got them cheeked up like that? Their next mission leads them to this Imperial mining colony where the duo liberate all the prisoners, during which they run into 2 Sith.
Sith spit.
I really did not read that as Sith spit. Alright, Blaster vs. Saber. Yeah, this should go good. That's a little excessive, bud.
Kyle!
Jan!
Oh, hell no. I'm about to go to the dark side right now. Kyle's anger at Jan's death causes him to seek out Force powers. After a talk with the Force ghost of his dad, he goes to get some help from a familiar face, first time seen in this series. I really appreciate the tension between Kyle and Luke. It really makes me wonder more about their history. So Kyle needs his lightsaber, but Luke wants to see if Kyle is worthy to still wield it. Meaning we've got to do a level that teaches us how to use the Force powers in this game. We can see Luke's new academy of Jedi learners. A new generation of Jedi. This is the stuff I want to see. This is so cool. Where's Mara though? We learned from Luke that this Dasan guy was once a student who turned evil. Well, he grew up being treated poorly for his Force abilities, so he always kind of had that brewing in him. After getting our lightsaber, the gameplay is already miles ahead of the previous game. We go to Nar Shaddaa to track down this guy who sold Dasan his ship. And yes, I have the realistic lightsaber effects turned on. Oh, this is why you play the game on PC. I don't actually know if you can turn this on the console version. I don't think so, but this is crazy right here. After all these years, we finally have a lightsaber that feels like a lightsaber. We don't quite get the information we need, but we do run into another familiar face, Lando, and he's actually voiced by Billy D. Williams. We save Lando and then move to Bespin. While on Bespin, we face off against our first lightsaber-wielding opponents. It seems realistic lightsaber makes these fights, well, realistic. Eventually, we face off against Dasan's apprentice, who informs us that Jan is still alive. Thank God. Fighting this boss was a mixed bag because at random points, I would just lose limbs. But on one reset, I killed her in 2 hits, so it seems a little inconsistent. Cutscene-wise, Kyle spares her, and Luke and Kyle team up to go against Dasan's asteroid base, where they discover that Dasan is building his own Jedi fighting army. Luke faces off against Dasan and gets separated from Kyle, now stuck in Dasan's ship, the Doom Giver. Aboard the Doom Giver, Kyle calls Rogue Squadron for help and warns them of Dasan's plan to attack the Jedi Academy. While we also save Jan. No. Before escaping, Kyle wants to lower the shield so Rogue Squadron can blow up the ship, during which we encounter not Thrawn, just some Imperial asshole Iron Man who wants to be the next Emperor. Yeah, right, jackass. Now back to Yavin 4. The final stage of the game has us traveling through Yavin to the final boss with Dasan, which isn't very difficult at all. The game ends with Luke and Kyle on good terms, and Kyle hinting at the possibility of being a Jedi. Jedi Outcast is regarded as one of the best Star Wars games ever made, and I totally get it. The game was incredible. I still think Dark Forces 2 had a bit more of an investing story. I didn't care much about the villains in this one, but I did care more for Kyle and his journey. His determination to save Jan and being this morally gray Jedi is just really interesting. Getting to fight with Luke and Lando. This game really is a dream for Star Wars nerds. The gameplay is the best it's ever been for the series, and some of the best lightsaber gameplay we've ever seen in the franchise. I cannot believe this game came out in 2002 because it's so next level. But then again, 2002 was a really good year for gaming. If you haven't already, you've got to try this one out. It also had a multiplayer mode, which looks pretty cool, and there's loads of mods to keep this game alive with its own community. Alright, time for the Attack of the Clones games. Interestingly enough, generally considered to be the worst of the prequel trilogy, had some of the coolest games. First up is Star Wars Jedi Starfighter. This game is a sequel to Starfighter. It serves as an opening chapter to the film, with its focus being the film's new fancy ship, the Jedi Starfighters, the Delta Sevens.
Ah, Count Dooku.
Count Dooku? What? This is the game's villain, Toth, a Trade Federation cooperative working with Dooku, experimenting some new weapon, whatever. We play as Adi, a wild choice, but I greatly respect it. Windu tasks Adi with meeting with Nim, from the previous title. Doing so has this meeting with Reddy, also from the previous title, first to find Nim. The gameplay here is very similar to the first, but we are using a cooler craft this time. I don't care, I said it. The Delta Sevens are way cooler than the Naboo Starfighters. And there are quite a bit of additions. We have these sort of holograms of the characters speaking, facing us. And there's also more use for the D-pad now that the ships have multiple secondary weapons. The Starfighter, for example, has Force abilities. Force Fields, Force Lightning, slowing down time. Nim isn't so keen on working with a Jedi, so Adi has to prove herself by assisting the Resistance against the Trade Federation. This makes for a good chunk of the missions. Lots of similar structures to the previous games. Blow up enemies and protect allies. Now, what's really interesting is that Act 3 moves us to Geonosis. The game is now interweaving the main conflict onto the first battle of the Clone Wars, having us protect Yoda's cruiser and some gunships on the surface, getting a good look at all the new toys for the CIS. Afterwards, the game concludes with Adi facing off against Toth and his fleet, eventually ending on a 1v1 like the previous game's boss, significantly easier. I don't really have much to say about this one. If you liked the first Starfighter, I'm sure you'd probably like this one too. I did. It has a decent story and not too much has changed. The cinematics do look better. And there's a lot of nice additions, so you can't just call it a clone of the previous game. There's loads of fun bonus stuff like these little animations, lots of extra levels. It's a cool game and worth checking out if you want some extra lore prior to Attack of the Clones. Our next game is the only Attack of the Clones movie-based game for the Game Boy Advance. That's right, this one did not get a full-scale console game. I guess I can kinda understand why. It's still very fascinating though. I actually did have this game growing up. This game is somewhat impressive. I think it's a good reminder of how powerful the Game Boy Advance really was. The general gameplay is simple. A side-scroller where you whack enemies with your lightsaber. Combos are done by what direction you're holding on the D-pad. Now the second stage has a vehicle section, which again may not look super great to you, pretty impressive for the time, given the hardware. Kinda reminds me of the Spider-Man swinging sections from the 2002 game. The story is actually told to us through cutscene slideshows with images from the films. Better quality than we've seen before. Next we play as Obi-Wan on Commando, and yes, the characters play the same. I can't complain too much, it's Game Boy, you know? This turns into a space section reminiscent of those classic NES and SNES games with a simple POV shooter approach. And yes, in case you're wondering, you do get to slaughter the Tusken Raiders. Geonosis is where things get kind of annoying. You've got rocks falling on you and platforming. You do get to play as Windu in the arena, and I love how nonchalant the boss with Jango is. The final stages have you going after Dooku. The final boss is in 2 stages. You fight Dooku once as Obi-Wan, then again as Anakin. And that's it. Game over. It's competent enough. It's not the best Game Boy game or the best Game Boy Star Wars game, but it passes the time. The levels do feel a bit too long at times, especially with the repetitive gameplay, but it looks nice and it sounds nice. It's just kind of bizarre. This is the only real Attack of the Clones game out there. That said, the next game does continue the film, and I am very nostalgic for this one, and I know a lot of people are too. Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I remember fondly playing this game on the GameCube. I'm sure many of you remember the Tetris combo pack with Xbox. It was actually harder for me to find a solo copy of the game without the Tetris combo. That said, we'll be playing the PS5 re-release, which is mostly just a port. This is essentially a vehicle-based game with some on-foot sections. It opens on Geonosis, kinda feels like a companion to Jedi Starfighter actually. We play as Mace alongside Luminara, making our way to the arena where Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan are being held captive. It's cool to see the infiltration process from the Republic's perspective. And we're also in a tank. Welcome basically to the whole game! I've said before, I'm personally not a huge fan of these types of vehicle games, but Clone Wars I think is actually a lot of fun. You steer vehicles that auto-lock into nearby enemies, each vehicle with its own special missiles or secondary weapons. The first stage is mostly to familiarize yourself with the vehicle controls, destroying these cannons so that the clone and Jedi forces can land. The last one requires Mace to go on foot. The on-foot controls aren't super great. You can swing your lightsaber or throw it, which I'm sure most of you will be doing. It is immensely fun knocking down the enemies with a saber throw. The second stage familiarizes us with protecting allies, as we must protect this convoy from the Droid Army. All these stages have these bonus conditions as well, like the Starfighter games, which will unlock neat little bonus features. After movie events, we get some gunship gameplay which has cool secondary firing all these lasers at targeted enemies. After clearing the Separatist Corps ships, the story progresses a couple weeks into the war. Anakin and Obi-Wan have to help Republic forces escape from Renvar. I think this is our first time seeing the planet, which has been taken over by the Separatists. Afterwards, the Jedi sent something odd happening at Rexus Prime, and as usual send Anakin and Obi-Wan to investigate. This mission reminds me of the Tatooine stage in Shadow of the Empire. It's technically a race, but really you're just supposed to knock out all the enemies. While the missions were going successfully, Obi-Wan senses that things were a bit too easy. And then Dooku shows up, which triggers Anakin.
Count Dooku. He's here.
Anakin, wait!
Obi-Wan destroys this big-ass thing, but Anakin has been taken by Dooku. During Anakin's imprisonment, he befriends Great Bera, who he works with to liberate Wookiees, and learns about this ancient Sith weapon. We spend some missions on these things, and finally the Republic shows up, informing the Council of the weapon, which is actually used to gather energy for an even greater weapon. The Council makes the executive decision to go make Obi-Wan and Anakin fix it. Returning to Renvar, Anakin speaks with the spirit of this Jedi who was really popular in comics and outside lore. It must have been really cool for fans of him to see him finally have a voice here. Final set of missions have the Republic leading a large barrage against the Dark Reaper on this planet called Thule. Anakin, as always, rushes in and faces the final boss with the weapon on his own. You know, as a kid, I always loved to pop in the old Clone Wars DVD after finishing this game. It felt like a cool lead-in. I don't know if anyone else ever did that. Anyway, yeah, this game holds up greatly. I appreciate this game for establishing more with the lore, the mythos, connecting to the comics and all this outside stuff. Hearing about the Sith War had me reeling as a kid. And this was our first major scale game with the Clone Wars, not counting the expansion for Galactic Battlegrounds. So that's really damn cool. The game, even more than its story, had great multiplayer features, online and split screen. Loads of game modes to go through. So much fun. It's still so much fun today. Now the next one is a game that I'm nostalgic for, even though I have not played it very much prior to this. Star Wars Bounty Hunter. Interestingly, one of the few Star Wars games that didn't come out on Xbox. I also remember playing this one a little bit on GameCube, but not really enough to say that I played it. The game released at the end of 2002, being a prequel to Attack of the Clones. But unlike Jedi Starfighter, this one is set 10 years before the film, giving us some insight on Jango Fett and how he got involved with Dooku and the Clone Army. I've really been wanting to play this one for a while, especially since the remaster came out. And say what you will, but these remasters have been really damn clean lately. I don't think I've come across a bad one yet. The cutscenes in this game are incredible, and this was due to a huge collaborative effort with 3 different studios. This really enhances the narrative experience of this game. The story opens with Sidious telling Dooku that they need to take care of this gang or cult called the Bando Gora, which is being led by a Sith apprentice. He also mentions that they still need a host for their clones. We switch to Jango doing what he does best, bounty hunting, alongside his informant Roz, played by Lucille Bliss, best known for being the original Smurfette, opening up on this arena fighting that thing. The opening mission showcases many of his gadgets, torches for opening up gates, scanner for finding optional bounties, and rope for capturing them, all references to the film too. Finding these bounties are what's going to take up most of your time, by the way. Pretty much all I have left to do to get plat is to find the rest of them. Primarily, Jango is hunting this guy called Miko. During this whole process, we get to see stuff like how Jango got his jetpack, that conveniently matches his armor. After going through all this and finishing the job, Dooku hires Jango and this guy, who got a whole cutscene so you know he's a big deal, voiced by Clancy Brown, to find the leader of the bando for 5 million credits. Now to find this leader, he must first get some information from a death stick seller. Who would have thought that this meme from the movie would have turned into a whole plot point for this damn game? I really enjoyed Chapter 2 just for getting a better look at the underground Coruscant. This has always been something that fascinates me. After a battle with this guy, a very easy battle I might add, we chase after a senator in his high-rise apartment. Is now really the time to be dancing?
Release him! Now!
As you wish.
No, please!
God, I love Star Wars. The next chapter leads Jango to a prison infiltration. The story gets really interesting when Jango runs into Zam. Getting to see their first encounter is a really cool narrative point too. You're telling me Zam was also a character? That's crazy. And this is how he gets the Slave One? This game's cool. Jango decides to keep Zam around for his plans as they travel to Malastare. Montrose shows up again, making references to Mandalorian lore that you have to read comic books to learn more about. And then this boss fight. Would you believe me if I told you we're going back to Tatooine? We shoot up the streets like an average Wednesday in Mos Espa, finding a bounty to get info from Jabba, who leads to another hut. Zam gets captured and sells out Jango, causing him to fight this thing. Afterwards, he leaves Zam in a timeout, and Montrose tortures Roz. Roz dies in a rather heart-wrenching moment. Now it's time to clear things up on Colma. Finally time to end things with Montrose. Oh cool, there's actually a cutscene if you lose. Things don't go well for Jango after winning though, because Vossa captures him. Weirdly enough, Zam is here. Yeah, sure. Oh, those look familiar. The final boss is... well, it happened. Afterwards, Dooku kills Zam and offers Jango a special job at Commando. Now, you see, this is a good game. It's fun, well made, but its narrative serves a stronger purpose, to expand on a character for an overall larger story point. I frankly just did not give a damn about Jango Fett before this game, but I really grew to like the character, since I actually got to learn a little bit about him, and to see him with all that fun Star Wars wit.
That'll be a sour batch.
I doubt this game could be considered canon, but it's fun to pretend. It's actually a rather lengthy story mode, but since there aren't really any other play modes, it's good to have a long story. I still got some trophies I need to get after the fact, so I'll definitely be returning to this game later. But for now, we gotta move on. Our last Attack of the Clones game, New Droid Army for the GBA. This game takes place just a little bit after the film, so I guess in between the previous Clone Wars game. The Council receives a strange distress call, and decide to send Anakin to Tatooine to check it out. Yeah, I'm sure he'll love that. That is his favorite planet after all. This game actually has cutscenes, and it's pretty impressive. More so than the previous Game Boy game. Damn, we even got maps on here? This one is isometric, unlike the side-scroller. It's more so akin to the GBA port for Jedi Power battles. You got your lightsaber attacks, which use up energy that I assume is the Force, as well as Force abilities, such as speed or push. Anakin fights Womp Rats, Tusken Raiders, running into some familiar faces. He learns that the Republic's contact has been taken by Jabba, leading us to fight Aura Singh? I mean, how you doing? Yeah, that's the chosen one right there. Anakin ends up conveniently imprisoned with the contact, rescuing her and Jabba's prisoners. Then ends up facing yet another female dual-wielding Sith apprentice. Dooku sure has a type. Obi-Wan informs Anakin that Coruscant is under attack? A little early for that, isn't it? Underground, Anakin runs into Queen Offie herself. Crawling through the streets of Coruscant, we run into good old Dexter also. We head back to the Jedi Temple and run into Dooku. What a haunting stare. The game ultimately ends on this droid factory, and after some bosses, we fight Dooku himself and kill him. Anakin kills Dooku in this game. They later write this off as being a fake Dooku, but no. In this game, Anakin, they had Dooku be killed by Anakin. That is crazy work. Screw it, why not just have Anakin become a master at the end of the game? I don't know what this game was thinking, and frankly, I didn't like this one too much. I know this game does have its fan base. I found the levels getting pretty tiresome, the combat really clunky and inconsistent, and overall it was more of a tedious experience than a fun one for me. But I can respect the game for what it is. There's a lot of neat things here in its presentation. Well, now that we finished 2002, it's time to open 2003 with one of the best Star Wars games ever made, Knights of the Old Republic. Oh boy, my heart skipped a beat. This is a big one, the big one. Many consider this to be one of the greatest games ever made. Not just Star Wars, but one of the greatest RPGs ever. Knights of the Old Republic, or KOTOR for short, is the first major Star Wars RPG, set nearly 4,000 years before A New Hope, which already has my interest. I love learning more about the history of the Jedi and the Sith Wars. Honestly, that's way more interesting to me than anything post-Death Star 2. And I haven't played this one much at all, but I did play a little bit of 2 back in the day. This was originally released on Xbox and PC. It has since been remastered for the Switch, although I haven't played it, as I've heard mixed receptions on the remaster. We'll be playing the PC version with some mods to help support it better on modern systems. After all that craziness of setting that up, we get to a character creation scene, and it's pretty limited, but I can't complain too much for the time and what the narrative ends up being. You can pick a class. I chose smugglers because they're pretty cool, and a portrait. Let's pick a name, a hardcore Star Wars name, something really cool. That'll work. The game opens on the ship being attacked by the Sith. The protagonist is woken up by this guy telling us we gotta go save Bastilla, which is one of the only characters I actually know about this game. We get some gameplay, mechanic introductions, and the combat. It's basically a pretty simple turn-based combat. Interesting to see the Sith using these swords. Got a kind of a medieval feel going on with this armor here. Now Bastilla escapes on a pod, and we link up with Karth and escape to Terrace. Let me just go ahead and say it here. This is a huge game. Humongous. The biggest game we played so far on this list, especially in its lore. And I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with it by this point. It's a very popular title, a very popular game. So this is going to be abridged greatly. The length of this video would be tripled if I detailed every single side mission and scavenging part of this game. So I implore your understanding in this. Seriously, this game is huge. But then again, these are the same developers of the original Baldur's Gate and Mass Effect, so you know, that actually checks out a lot. So Karth and I spend our time talking to people, doing side quests, and trying to find Bastilla. This is a very, very long introduction planet. I like this one where we go to this party, and everyone's dead. We buy a droid, and it's dead. We watch some dancing Twi'leks, and eventually we meet up with these two, Mission and our Wookiee buddy Zalbar. They end up joining our crusade after Zalbar states he owes us a life debt. Taking advantage of a turf war, we learn Bastilla is being used as a prize for these races. So our hero decides to save her by winning her. It's a pretty simple section. You just hit these boosts until you reach the end. Finally, we got a Jedi on our team. Bastilla suspects that the protag may be force sensitive, but assures us that we'll deal with that later. First, we have to escape the planet by stealing a ship from some mobster guy. During this time, the big bad of the game is introduced, Darth Malak. And what better way to introduce a villain by having them destroy an entire city? All in all, the opening planet took me about 4 hours. We get a fun little turret section here in space, and then we're on Dantooine. I remember when Leia mentioned that planet that one time. Apparently there's a side Jedi Council here who gives our protag a little training montage. We go through some trials and build our own lightsaber. All the while, the Jedi Masters... man, there's a Yoda for every generation, huh? They play hella matchmaker with Bastilla and the protag, setting them up together for this whole journey. Investigating some ruins, they find a star map, which opens the main plot of the game. We have to find the rest of these pieces of the map so that we can find out what Malak's ultimate evil Sith plan is. So we have to travel to several different planets, some of those familiar to us, like Tatooine. We can never escape this damn planet. Here we meet Bastilla's mom and help them out in their little family drama, also increasing our own bond with her, which eventually turns very romantic. As usual for Tatooine, we gotta slaughter some Tusken Raiders to ultimately achieve our goal. The next stop is the Wookiee planet Kashyyyk, or Kashyyyk as it's pronounced in some of these early games. Even 4,000 years later, they're still subject to slavery. Poor guys. As you would expect, this brings in some drama with our own Wookiee friend, whose brother portrayed his family to fall in with slavers. It should be noted by this point that I am doing a light side playthrough, so I choose to save their father and help bring an end to this treachery. And the Wookiees have their own little rebellion. I found the star map with the help of this old grumpy Jedi hermit, and then I rizzed up Bastilla afterwards, I think. It's kind of blacked out on me. What's going on here? Next is this aquatic planet where we have to play Fish Law and Order? I'm about 11 hours into the game, by the way. After getting the 4th map, Malak's Leviathan picks us up. And here we actually face off against the Darth, who informs us that we are actually the big Sith Lord Revan. Turns out the Jedi reprogrammed our mind after we were defeated in the prologue. That is a wild twist right there. Basila sacrifices herself so we can survive. I assume since this is a light side playthrough, everyone is keen on sticking with us, even after learning about our identity. The last planet we go to holds the Sith Academy, right into the heart of the enemy. Looks quite imperial, doesn't it? We have to do several tasks here to earn the respect of the headmaster, whose own apprentice wants to kill him, and take over the academy because, you know, Sith. Eventually we find the last star map and fight against the headmaster and the apprentice. After completing the map, we make our way to the finale. But first, our ship is shot down on this planet, where there's more fish people drama. While here, we run into Basila, who has been turned to the dark side, making some really tempting offers, but this is a light side playthrough, so we can't cave. Basila runs off and we go to the Star Forge. It's a pretty linear finale. You mostly just have to fight a lot of enemies. We also get to turn Basila back to the light side using the power of love. Cue Huey Lewis. And then we face off against Malak, where I used all the grenades I had been saving from my playthrough to blow his ass up. And there we get the light side ending. About 20 hours in my first playthrough. This is undoubtedly the longest Star Wars game we've played. But it is an RPG and a damn good one. And I can understand why this is considered one of the best Star Wars games ever made. I loved it from start to finish. I got a little obsessed with it and its lore. But on the other hand, I can also see why it might be a little irritable for some. The turn-based combat is good, but not the best, and it is a lot of running around back and forth with little to no fast travel. And don't get me wrong here, after all, I'm the guy who 100%'d the original Witcher twice. I have little issue with this. My only problem was that I was marathoning several games, and trying to speedrun this one is not the optimal way to enjoy it. And there are several more playthroughs for me to explore coming back to this, different endings per your Foresight affiliation, your gender, romantic options. There's still a lot to explore here. And like I said, I haven't played the Switch version, which is the most modern way to play the game, but I do think there's still merit on owning this on PC. It takes a little bit of modding to get it to work proper, but yeah, KOTOR is one of the top dogs for sure, and I cannot wait for the sequel. Next up is the last of the Dark Forces series, Jedi Academy. This was originally going to be Jedi Knight 3 with the conclusion of Kyle's story, but was actually scrapped for a more kinda RPG approach. Here you play a new character, Jaden, with whose appearance you can determine. So Jaden is a student of the Jedi Academy, which just so happens to be attacked on their arrival day.
Ever wonder if your master is holding you back?
I can already tell this guy's gonna be a problem. Jaden proves himself to be pretty capable, and yes, this game also has realistic lightsaber effects. We are placed under the tutelage of Kyle Katarn. The game controls very similar to previous titles with some refinements in the combat, and the visuals are a lot nicer this go around with the new engine. The story structure, however, is very different in this game. There is a main narrative focused on the Sith cult led by Tavion from the previous game. They're trying to resurrect or steal the power of this ancient Sith guy, whatever. Jaden is sent on several different missions revolving around the cult. Not too many film characters in this one, but we do see Chewie. After completing enough missions, you get to go back to the main narrative. Oh hell yeah, Tauntaun gameplay. After dueling Great Alile, Luke promotes us, and we get to change up our lightsaber. This is when the game gets really fun. Me personally, I like dual wielding. Oh yeah. Just like before, we have 5 more missions to do before returning to the main narrative. I really like this stage traveling Darth Vader's castle. That was really freaking cool. Our buddy here unfortunately gets seduced by the dark side. That's a problem we'll fix later. First, we gotta fight Boba Fett? Alright. The final act has us choosing if we want to be on the light side or the dark side. Although it feels kind of forced to push our protag's anger. The canon light side ending has you beating Great Alile, and our buddy losing his arm. Better than his life. And then we fight an army of Sith at the Sith Temple before the final boss, which isn't really difficult given the realistic lightsaber combat. And we save the galaxy, I guess. The story in this one is not nearly as investing as Jedi Outcast, and I think the separation from Kyle kinda hurts it in the story department. I mean, Jan isn't even in this one. And where's Mara at? It is cool to have your own character, even if it's not really an RPG like KOTOR. The gameplay, however, is much better this go around, and it is so much fun swinging your lightsaber around. I can definitely understand why this one would be a favorite for many, especially in the gameplay department. I personally lean more towards Jedi Outcast. But I think the real highlight here is that all the games of this series are awesome, and that's a rarity. It really is. I've enjoyed the entirety of Dark Forces. I hope 2 can get some kind of remaster so that the entire collection is available to people no matter what system they play. It'd be great if everyone could experience these games in their entirety. Now, our last console game of 2003 is also the last, a lot of those this year, huh? Of the Rogue Squadron Trilogy. Well, quad if we count Battle for Naboo. Rogue Squadron 3 Rebel Strike. This one I haven't played as much, and I didn't own it back in the day, but I do remember the cover quite vividly, and I used to rent it quite a bit. Given how much I loved 2 growing up, I'm not quite sure why 3 never ended up in my collection. Factor 5 had returned to give us one last go at playing Luke and Wedge in their space military battles. Now in the tutorial mission here, you will immediately notice a major difference. We are on foot now. We have on foot, land vehicles, and air gameplay. I gotta say, it's pretty cool traveling Luke's old home. This one opens up right after blowing up the Death Star. Now we gotta help the rebels escape Yavin from the Empire, which is truthfully something I was always curious to see, so it's pretty cool to play that. I can't imagine the Empire would take their major space station blowing up without being really PO'd. The previous game let us play Vader's perspective in a very aggressive manner. As you can see, this game isn't very different from the previous, both visually and in gameplay. It's pretty much the same, but they did only throw this one out just a year later. The biggest difference is these on-foot sections. And the fixed camera approach was certainly a choice. Well, I was not expecting that. After the opening mission, the game splits into 2 campaigns, one for Luke and one for Wedge. I will say that these missions feel more intricate with the land sections added on. This game sure does utilize more movie footage. Okay, yeah, this is cool. This is fun. They crammed a lot into this GameCube disc. They even put Luke's Dagobah training in here, on a flight simulator game. What the hell's going on? Platforming? What the hell? Oh, this sucks. This sucks so much. What? Mission failed? What? That's what's supposed to happen in the movie! What do you mean? I literally did it! Turns out, I was pressing the button too fast. Anyway, Luke's campaign ends here on the Sarlacc pit. Yeah, because they needed to include Leia in the bikini in-game, I guess. Thank you. The last 2 missions of Luke's campaign were platformers, and also took less than an hour to beat. You know what? Let's just see if we can get gold. Huh. Second try. Let's play Wedge now. Geonosis? Wow. Attack of the Clones mentioned. Okay, I never thought I'd be playing Wedge fighting against battle droids. Or a gunship. You know, funny enough, this is the most prequels content we've seen in 2003 so far. Okay, that's awesome. The music stops for the sonic blast. That is so cool. There's a lot of really cool level designs in Wedge's campaign. Please, 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 please. Oh. After completing Wedge's campaign, there's 2 additional finale levels, both Moon of Endor based. The first is the famous speeder chase scene. This made my ass itch. The final mission has us playing as Chewie on the AT-ST. Then it switches to Han on foot to plant the charges. Oh yeah, this guy got mad because he wasn't getting enough attention, so he turned to the Empire, I guess. There are a lot of extra goodies in this title. Of course, you've got the bonus missions, such as the Death Star escape, with more movie clips if you needed them. It's a pretty neat level. You get to explore the Death Star on foot. It's a cute scene recreation, I guess. Pretty lengthy for a bonus mission too. I personally like the one where you play the A-Wing pilot going against Vader's ship. I tried to be lore accurate here. Outside of bonus missions, the new big thing here is multiplayer. Yeah, there are several different play modes available. The big one is cooperative. Here you play the story missions of Rogue Squadron 2 in 2-player. The story mode of 2 is also in this game. That is crazy. I tried it out with my girlfriend here and, well, it works. And there are loads of other play modes online too, like dogfights and racing. And lastly, there's the arcade mode, which I briefly mentioned before in the previous video, but yes, you can play the old arcade games here. Rogue Squadron 3 is a lot. There's certainly quite a bit of odd choices made here, but since the previous game was somewhat rushed, it feels as if 2 and 3 make one complete package. It's harsh to call 3 more of an expansion, when really it just feels like the other half. 2 pieces to make a full experience. I almost forgot this one from 2003. I remember the cover art fondly of this game, but I never actually played it. Star Wars Flight of the Falcon, a Game Boy game. Yeah, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is a flight simulator for the Game Boy focused on the original trilogy. And yeah, this is pretty much it. I think it looks great, actually, but we have to consider that we're looking at an emulation and not the real deal. It's 14 long repetitive stages that don't really play that great, and frankly give me a headache. It got a lot of really negative reviews on release. Personally, I think it's just okay. Now, there was one more big game that came out in 2003, but unfortunately, I cannot play it. Star Wars Galaxies. Galaxies was the first Star Wars MMO, and MMOs were really growing in popularity these days. Star Wars wanted to throw its hat in. All I can really do is look at this fondly from a distance. I vaguely remember playing it once back in the day, but it was a $15 monthly subscription, and to me it wasn't that good. It's a really cool and ambitious idea, and I bet people have a lot of fond memories of it too, so be sure to let me know if you have any if you played this back in the day. The MMO also had several expansions, most of which released alongside Revenge of the Sith. Galaxies did last for a while. It actually wasn't shut down until 2011. Now this video is focused on console and portable console games. I won't really be looking at mobile or web browser games. Most of them aren't available anymore, but I did want to make an acknowledgement to them. Especially in 2003, we were starting to see a real rise in web browser games, as the internet was starting to really take shape. I'm especially nostalgic for this one based on the old Clone Wars cartoon from 2003. Well, we've only got 2 more years left of the prequels era, and 2004 only had 3 games. We start off with the beast itself, Star Wars Battlefront. The shooter craze was really starting to develop here. You had Battlefield, Halo, Call of Duty. Ah yes, the game that finally let you experience the war in Star Wars as the common foot soldier, with all the death and glory it has to offer. There's 2 campaigns to choose from, prequels or original trilogy, all of which have film footage cutscenes, sorta. The prequel campaign opens on Naboo. Here you play as the Trade Federation attacking the Gungans. It's a pretty straightforward Battlefield clone. You have your third and first person, primary and secondary weapons, as well as some grenades or explosives, several different classes to choose from. Your standard trooper, your sniper, heavy armory, technician, which fixes broken battle items, or marksman, which I spend most of my time playing. You can also use vehicles in the area. The maps and textures in this game are still beautiful. I'm not using any mods, nor am I playing the remaster. This is the base game as it was. The maps are full in size and loaded with references and familiar sights for fans. The prequels campaign continues to Theed, again a beautiful map. At this point we unlock another class, a special type, in this case, Droidekas. And then we go to Kashyyyk with Dooku on our side. This game has special characters that pop up but are not playable. Afterwards, we finally get to the Clone Wars on Geonosis. With gunships and walkers, yeah, it's starting to really feel like a war now. And this is where the game really gets fun. And this is where you actually have to start trying. The rest has us going through random planets as well. And you know, Revenge of the Sith wasn't out yet. It includes Renvar, Kashyyyk in the daytime. And we celebrate because we won. Sorta. And then of course there's the original trilogy, which opens on A New Hope. We play the Empire attacking Tatooine, both the Dune Sea, a very fun map. Anyone else just jump into Sarlacc for fun when they were younger? And the streets of Mos Eisley, where Vader joins interestingly enough. Oh, bro's hunched worse than me. We get another Renvar map and a Yavin one before the game switches us to the Rebel side, as they celebrate their major victory against the Empire. Then going through movie relevant locations like Hoth, Bespin. The city was one of my favorite maps. The Carbonite Chamber. Of course, the game ends on Endor with a deciding victory for the Rebellion. There's lots of play modes. The best one is Galactic Conquest. Here you have several campaigns based on team affiliate, clones, rebels, CIS, or Empire. You conquer planets for overall domination. Battlefront II really expanded on it. Of course, the big thing here is multiplayer, which is kind of a pain in the ass to do with the classic games. They did remaster this with updated multiplayer, but apparently it's really bad, so I've avoided it. I think the remaster is more worthwhile for consoles though, given that the PC version isn't much different graphically, and is still great today. There are some problems. The AI is absolutely useless, the vehicles are awful. Overall, it's still a great game, and I had a lot of fun revisiting this one. The next game released the same day as Battlefront. This is a GBA game. Star Wars Trilogy, Apprentice of the Force. Another one I remember the cover of, but never played myself. This is a GBA game that covers all 3 films of the original trilogy, by Ubisoft. Ah, shit. This is a side-scroller from entirely the perspective of Luke, with cutscenes told in these types of stills. At first, the game is pretty simple. You do some platforming, shoot some sand people, whatever. It seems like a harmless game, and then it turns into a tedious, frustrating experience. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, enemies that used to die in 1 to 2 hits take longer to kill, and they whittle you down like crazy. It's not that big of a deal with unlimited continues, but when you have to start all the way back at the beginning of a screen, that sucks, as some screens are pretty short, and some are very long. And those levels drag on. And then you have escort missions with R2, who only gets 3 lives. At least Leia gets a whole health bar, and a gun. This kicks ass right here. The Death Star attack was atrocious. It starts off like this derby with 30 TIE fighters. 30. If you die, that counter resets. Ugh, god. The trench run is then a sort of obstacle course with TIEs behind you. At least the game gets a little better once you get your lightsaber. You train with Yoda, and it actually gets more interesting as you learn more Force abilities. Double jumping alone is a godsend. Still though, this game was... As the game promised, it does cover all the way through Jedi. It looks great, wonderful animations, incredible sound, but man, this game pisses me off. The last game of 2004 is KOTOR 2. I am both excited and terrified for this. The game was handed over to different developers. Oh boy, Obsidian this time. This game also only came out a year after the first, so how much could be changed? So apparently we play as the Last Jedi, after the end of the major Sith and Jedi War. And while this is an RPG allowing you to somewhat pick your character, there is a canon version. We start on Revan's ship, the Ebon Hawk, having been blasted. We have this tutorial section with our droid, and we go into this asteroid mining facility. Here we meet Kreia, this spooky old Jedi lady, and Aton, who really got it down bad for us. We also get our introduction to Freddy Krueger here. In terms of gameplay, it remains very similar to the predecessor. There are obvious UI enhancements, as well as some enhancements to the QOL, but in essence, it's still very much like the first. After finally escaping the facility, we arrive on Telos, where the welcoming party arrests us. Great. During our comfortable imprisonment, we learn of some of the diplomatic issues on the planet, basically choosing between light and dark side here, with whoever we help. And for this run, I'm doing the canonical light side playthrough. So we have to do some missions for these guys in order to find out where our ship is. After a series of tasks and optional side missions, we can take a shuttle to find our ship. Oh hey Karth. The shuttle, of course, crashes, and we run into someone from the Protag's past during her Jedi War days. We go through a dungeon and get another shuttle, which is also shot down. But we conveniently landed in front of Great Isle. We should have did a Great Isle counter. We get more insight on our Protag's past, exiled from the Jedi Council for joining Revan's war, making her status as Jedi questionable. Now we're on a journey to find the last of the Jedi Masters and bring them together. By this point, we can also craft a new lightsaber if you've got all the parts, because you have to build it yourself this time. Our first stop brings us to this jungle with Mandalorians. The leader is kind enough to help us out after we prove our worth. That includes going into the jungle, killing wildlife, and this thing that looks like Anguirus mixed with Baragon. Now on Onderon, there's another political dispute between the Queen and some guy we can't get involved with if we choose the dark side. In order to get to the Jedi we're looking for, we have to solve a murder mystery. At least now we can finally get some answers. God damn it. To the next stop, I guess. Now to Nar. Who the hell is this on my ship? Oh, come on. I don't even have a lightsaber yet.
I yield, Master. It is as I heard through the Force.
Oh hey, it's Kelly Hu. At Nar Shaddaa, we find ourselves trying to get the attention of a group called the Exchange. There's also a Hutt here who we can try to utilize. I feel violated. I get to keep this outfit though? After dealing with the gangs and such, the big dog wants to talk to us, which results in this bounty hunter joining us, allowing us to meet up with the Jedi Master. Unfortunately, our main character is captured, so we had to spend some time as the other party members to get her back. This was the most tedious part of the game. After all that, we can finally talk with the Jedi. Once we finish Nar Shaddaa, we make our first lightsaber, and then head on to Dantooine. Here, we travel the ruins of the Jedi Temple where Revan trained in the previous game. We find Rook, and the grumpy old Ed Asner isn't happy that we saved him in the way that, well, we operate. After we save Dantooine from these mercenaries, Ed Asner informs us the remaining Jedi will reunite in Dantooine once they learn more about the Sith. Time to go into the heart of Sith territory. Korriban, where we will find the last Jedi Master. Oh man, I almost forgot about this guy. For that note, we are at the end of the game and I still haven't seen Nihilus. Looks like he killed the Jedi we're looking for. We also visit this spooky ass cave for some sort of trials. Hey Malik. Well, since we basically did everything we could at this point, time to see if the heat has gone down in Onderon. We take care of the whole political situation here and enter the finale of the game. Looks like the Jedi have been doing some reconstruction. After bringing all those guys together, they inform us that we were exiled because we were too powerful with the Force. Bunch of bitches. And they want to cut us off from the Force completely. Oh! Well, thanks, Kreia. Atris seems to want to kill Kreia, which means we would die with our Force bond. And the Sith are doing their evil stuff at Telos, so yeah, final act. We beat Atris first, who has gone to the dark side. Where's my lightsaber at? Oh, there's Nihilus. Finally shows up at the end of the game. Still one of the coolest character designs in all of Star Wars. Through a tough battle, we beat Nihilus, and Kelly Hu is freed from his control. Our escape leads to talking with Karth, only to learn that Revan is missing. And then he recaps the first game to our new protag. And then we get a clue about Kreia. Yay! Another crash landing. Well, this is spooky. Warm welcoming party, at least. We battle Scion, who is Force Immortal or something. Gotta tucker him out. But finally, we have freedom from his... Oh, he's dead. Kreia time. Or Darth Tria. What the hell? The Kreia just kind of kills over and we escape. And that's it. Huh. Yeah, I definitely lean more towards the first game, both in story and characters. I felt like the crew was more memorable and charismatic in that one. On the other hand, KOTOR 2 brought in a lot of refinements to the gameplay and the overall look of the game, and still has a great story too. I think they both go great together, and yeah, definitely some of the coolest Star Wars experiences I've ever had. I'm still thinking about them well after playing them, and I'm ready to revisit them again, check out all the different paths and endings. But for now, we put about 40 hours in both of these games combined, so it's time to move on. Finally, 2005, the end of the prequel era, the release of Revenge of the Sith, and what we thought was going to be the end of Star Wars. I cannot express to you the excitement of this time. The first movie I saw in theaters was Revenge of the Sith. All the merchandise is incredibly nostalgic, especially the games. And the first was Republic Commando. Oh, yes. The game is set between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, meant to bridge the films, but this time from the clones' perspective. Keep in mind that at this time, clones weren't super fleshed out characters yet like we got in the canon 2008 series. All we really had to go off were novels, comics, and the 2003 cartoon, which even still didn't give the clones that much to work on. This is the first time I can recall really getting to share their experience and to see them as characters. This title was originally released on Xbox and PC. For this video, we will be playing the remaster on PS5. In this game, we don't just play any clones, we play the leader of Delta Squad, the Commando unit, top dogs, sent in to do the special missions that require a more talented approach, trained by Mandalorians. And these guys are canon with their one-scene appearance in Clone Wars. And they also have the coolest helmet designs. The opening mission is on Geonosis. The Commando is tasked with killing an important Geonosis separatist. We go boots on the ground to battle that changed the galaxy. And this is the first time ever that we really felt the intensity of being a soldier in Star Wars, way more than Battlefront. This is Band of Brothers Star Wars right here. Look at those droids. They're like deadites with those eyes. And the sound design, the grungy look. This is war. Speaking of sound design, They went really next level with the Foley artists who had actually worked on Star Wars, Private Ryan, and a lot of other high quality stuff. Something I always thought was cool is that you could stab enemies and see their blood and guts, or oil, on your visor, which has its own wiping mechanism. We meet up with some of our crew and are introduced to one of the most famous aspects of the game, the Ally AI, which is incredible. This may not seem like much to modern players, but back then, oh man, AI that was actually helpful in a game was a rarity. You command the troops according to their unique abilities to help out in situations. The opening stages have you meeting up with the crew until finally meeting your target. Yeah, this game makes you feel like an elite. Unfortunately, their job isn't done yet. They've also got to go and destroy a droid factory and one of these core ships. Look at Seth tackle this droideka. What a beast. The game escapes Geonosis and the story progresses a little over a year into the war. The next campaign has the Deltas investigating an assault ship that's gone dark. The first stages are kinda spooky actually, having you separated from the gang and going through the ghost ship alone. Star Wars Outside Lore has some fun horror stories with such concepts. Turns out the ship was overtaken by slavers. These guys want to sell the ship to the Separatists so that they can buy their own droids. Well, Delta ain't gonna let that slide. After getting the crew back, we have to clear the ship of all the slavers. But then the damn Separatists show up and things get really tense. We have to hold them off until reinforcements arrive. But at least we get to use a walker. The final hold and position here gets really intense, having to slice 3 computers that take a minute long each while not dying. The final campaign brings us to Kashyyyk. This serves as a great prelude into Revenge of the Sith, since Kashyyyk does play a big role in it. To get a little more insight on the whole Wookiee dilemma going on here, the gang have to save Tarful. During our infiltration, we run into a new person of interest. Recognize that ship? I actually believe this is our first time seeing Grievous's ship. Grievous was already growing in popularity as a character by this point. All we had really seen from him was the 2003 cartoon, where he was an absolute menace. That was my first introduction to the character, and I was ecstatic to see what he could do in the film. Getting this little glimpse of him in the game was so exciting. I think this was the first time we saw Grievous's guards too. The rest of the campaign had us going around blowing up droids and trying to ambush their invasion any way we can. Eventually the gang splits up to mount turrets against the Separatist ship. Sadly, Sev is killed in action, we assume, and they are ordered by Yoda himself to evac, because Yoda is mounting a full-scale attack against the droids to protect the Wookiees. Here the squad learns the harsh reality that their brotherhood doesn't go above their duty, not to the Jedi at least. All part of their little nods of disdain that they give towards the Jedi here, which is an interesting lead-in for Order 66. And then the game ends with a nice little foreboding teaser for Episode 3. The ending credits also feature the first licensed song used in a Star Wars game called Clones by Star Wars fanboy band Ash. Music video included in the bonus features. Yeah, this game still kicks ass. This potentially could be the best Star Wars shooter, with its competition coming up at the end of this video. The squad all carry their own fun personalities and witty dialogue. The missions are intense enough to make you feel like an elite, and to get that little extra insight of a clone's perspective, which was really needed since they aren't really much in the movies by themselves. And that ending hurt my heart the first time I played the game. Felt like I lost a brother. I want to play it again. But next up is one of my favorite video games ever made. LEGO Star Wars. We finally got here. This is a huge one for me. Similar to the story I told about with Rogue Squadron 2, this was one of the few games I had during that tough time, and I've played the hell out of it. These missions are burned into my genetic memory. And I don't mean LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, I mean the first, the OG. This one is purely the prequel trilogy. This is not the first LEGO-based video game, but it is the first to be like this, retelling the events of a license-based property in the LEGO fashion that we're familiar with today. Video games that anyone could pick up, child or adult, and have fun with. This is the bad boy that started it all. There's 2 notable versions, the console PC versions, which are virtually the same all around, I know, because throughout my life I've owned all 3 console versions. And then there's the Game Boy version, which is its own thing we'll look at after this. As stated before, this game retells the 3 films of the prequel trilogy, and what's really interesting is that this game came out in March. Revenge of the Sith came out in May. So, yeah, there's still a lot of time before the film released, and when this game dropped, it was the first exposure of that storyline for the public. Dexter's Diner, the first hub world. This is where you can go to the shop and pick your story. Not much to do at the beginning except play the first film. We all know how this works. You smash stuff, use the force to get studs, so you can buy characters and extras. There's no money multipliers in this game though, so you really gotta work for this one. Collecting the most money on a stage will earn you true Jedi. There's also the collectibles called mini kits, a staple of this franchise of games. Each mission has 10, which creates a special viewable item in the gallery room. Story mode has you play through the film's events in LEGO fashion. These games are meant to be 2-player co-op with drop-in and drop-out functions, so each mission has at least 2 characters available. The opening is a Trade Federation ship with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. Episode 1 and 3 have 6 levels, while 2 has 5, and I'll explain when we get to it. Since these games are non-dialogue and told through mostly pantomiming, each mission opens with a crawl to explain what's going on. After completing the first mission, you do unlock access to the other films, but let's just stick chronologically. The second stage brings us to the swamps of Naboo, where we bring in Jar Jar. You can swap characters of anyone in your party, many of which have unique abilities. Protocol or astromech droids can open their respective doors, and Jar Jar can jump higher than other characters. The missions themselves aren't very long, most can be finished in under 10 minutes if you're playing them normally without grabbing anything. The game spices things up by bringing us to Theed and having us play as Padme and Panaka. No lightsabers or force powers here, but we got blasters and grapples. It's pretty fun watching Padme pull out the blicky in her queen garb. Let's see if I still remember this old trick. Yep, still got it. The next stage is perhaps the most infamous, the pod race. The old vehicle missions in the original game are pretty rough, especially for a young child. You see, if you lose here, you have to start the section over again, and it's pretty easy to crash your pod. It doesn't maneuver very good. The real trick are these timed sections. There's little room for error. There's no free play vehicles in this game either, so you can get all the collectibles on your first playthrough. The last 2 stages are very condensed takes on the final act of the film, the first being the main gang retaking the palace. I love how Kid Anakin still has his pod racing goggles on, and the last stage has us facing off against Darth Maul. There was another stage with Anakin flying the Naboo Starfighter that was cut during development, although it will make its appearance in a bonus in Complete Saga. There's actually quite a lot of fascinating stuff that was cut, and there's some pretty cool videos on it out there. There it is! And like that, you got to play through all of Phantom Menace in under an hour. God, I love it. Attack of the Clones only has 5 stages. There was a first stage chasing Zam, but that was cut. And I can't remember if that was during development or if it even made it that far, but it is added back in the Complete Saga. But for now, this episode opens all the way up at Commando, which I think is about 40 minutes into the movie. We run into Jango. Why you look at him like that? Yeah, I didn't forget. The chase with Jango ends up in a boss fight, both against Jango and Boba and the Slave One. You could use R4 to turn on these turrets to distract Boba, or you could just dodge them. Obi-Wan makes his way to Geonosis and gets caught. Then we cut to Anakin and Padme, who are just cruising in space. Nothing about Tatooine or any of the, tensions between those two. Nah, they just chillin' until they get the call. Now we infiltrate the droid factory, fighting against Geonosians and the droids. After saving Obi-Wan, the gang gets captured again, and we move to the famous arena scene, playing as Mace himself. It's incredible how the game didn't make that many alternate versions for the characters. Obi-Wan still has his headset on, Anakin still has his pod racer helmet, yet they made sure to include Padme's clawed design. It was nice of them to notice the detail of Anakin having a green lightsaber here. The next stage is this episode's vehicle mission, which is a little tricky, although I'd argue that this is much less tedious than how they redid it in Complete Saga. Anyway, here's how you clear the core ship with no issue. The final stage is as you'd expect, the battle with Dooku. After Anakin gets his arm chopped off, Yoda pops up and we get some hoppy gameplay. And then the episode closes on one of the most famous memes from the franchise. Now for Revenge of the Sith, like I said before, the film hadn't been released yet, and it definitely shows. The first 2 were very faithful, while still being condensed, but Revenge of the Sith seems to fall a little short in the middle. The music for most scenes also isn't correct, because again, they didn't have access to that. The opening, however, majestic. The battle over Coruscant is one of the most fun and perfect levels in the game. A fun on-rail section leading up to Grievous's ship, the Invisible Hand. The next stage has us inside that ship. The first half has you traveling the ship as you look for Papa Palpy. Look how cold this Dooku kill is. No mercy, no do it. He just killed him. The second half of the level has you going to the bridge of the ship, with iconic moments like the elevator and the ship flipping on its side. The third stage goes straight into the duel with Obi-Wan and Grievous, and it's an odd stage. It's basically the landing pad, kinda, with Obi-Wan and Cody chasing Grievous around and getting some smacks in. Cody just kinda dies and Obi-Wan blasts Grievous's head off. We don't really see Anakin's perspective of what's going on in Coruscant. Understandable, as it might be a bit too gruesome for younger players, even though we do see Anakin slice Shaak Ti into pieces. Instead, we see Order 66 from Yoda's perspective on Kashyyyk, which I imagine must have been confusing for those experiencing the story for the first time here. There's not a whole lot of context, so now you gotta fight droids and clones on the beaches of Kashyyyk. Yoda escapes and meets with Obi-Wan at the now destroyed Jedi Temple. This level actually has a segment based off of a deleted scene from the film. It is really cool to get to travel the Jedi Temple. The final stage is Anakin vs Obi-Wan. What's interesting is that they make up both players for the level, having them fight during cutscenes but help each other during gameplay. The stage does end with you fighting your friend on the melting rock. Look at that, Anakin's lightsaber turned red. Luke and Leia are born, and Anakin gets his Darth Vader apparatus, and the prequels come to a close. Of course, the replayability comes in the free play. You can buy characters and use any that you wish in free play. With that, you are able to get the rest of the collectibles. Once you do that, you unlock a bonus mission, which is a sort of teaser for the next game. The cutscene is the same, but the level itself is different. It's the opening of A New Hope from Vader's perspective. It's a fun little teaser for the upcoming sequel. I mean, what more can I say that hasn't already been said about LEGO Star Wars? It's timeless fun for everybody. The first one's a little rough around the edges when you look at it comparatively, the later installments, but the charm is still there for sure. Ah yes, and then there's the Game Boy port. What an intriguing beast that is. This version is isometric with one playable character on screen at a time. The basic beats are the same, but the level designs are all different. You get a little more exploration here, and there are some scenes covered in this game that aren't in the movie. Episode 2 starts off with Anakin and Padme stuff that we didn't see, and goes straight into Tatooine, which was completely cut from the console game. And this is basically how the cutscenes go in this version. Something really odd is that, I guess because of the limitations, they didn't update the respective version of the characters for the films. Here we have Padawan Anakin in episode 3. It's still a fascinating port. I don't necessarily know if that's a compliment, but it's pretty neat. And you do get to experience all 3 prequel films, so that's cool. And the music is also great. Next up is episode 3, The Game. I love this one. I actually did a 100% on this on my gaming channel not that long ago. This came out about a week before the film, which is crazy to think about. It actually uses real footage from the film as cutscenes too. This is a sort of hack and slash type game with a major focus on the lightsaber combat, which was done by the choreographers of the film. The lightsaber combat in the game is so fun and so addicting. You play as Anakin and Obi-Wan throughout the events of the film. The first is a sort of introductory to learn the mechanics. The general gameplay is simple. You beat up bad guys and go to the destination. You can use force abilities in combat and to interact with the environment. You also want to get your combo up as high as you can. This will maximize the points you get for upgrading your abilities at the end of each level. The second level is actually based off of a deleted scene from the film, which has you going to the lower levels of Grievous's ship. We get our first duel with Dooku, and this used to kick my ass when I was a kid. I like how Anakin just skewers him. After Dooku, we make our way to the bridge, fighting lots of droids and the guards. The game then shifts primarily to Obi-Wan's perspective on Utapau chasing Grievous. Anakin and Obi-Wan do have very distinctly different fight styles. I personally like Anakin's fight style a little more. The Utapau stages are fun. You fight crab droids and these other assholes that Grievous throw at you until finally battling him. The Grievous boss is pretty iconic. After beating Grievous, we get a boss battle with Mace Windu, which can actually be a little tricky. It's wild to see them absolutely duking it out instead of just chopping his hand off. Brutal. We then get some stages of Order 66 with Anakin attacking the temple. He kills the old librarian Jedi and then a bunch of Padawans and Jedi Knights. He also fights Sin and his Padawan Sarah. Sin is played by the film's stunt coordinator in the movie version. We then spend some time with Obi-Wan escaping Utapau and surviving Order 66. The game ends on Mustafar with Anakin hunting down the remaining Separatist leaders, and Obi-Wan and Yoda at the Jedi Temple trying to reset the trap Vader had set for remaining Jedi. Finally, you fight Vader as Obi-Wan in a very fun and decently length boss battle. You might think that would be the end of the game, but no. There's an extra mission now from Anakin's perspective, and in this version, you get an alternate ending where Anakin wins. Assuming Padme still dies here, Anakin kills Obi-Wan and then Palpatine. This was so crazy to see back in the day. There's also loads of bonus missions like this one with Ben fighting Vader. This is how kids in the 70s thought it was like. You can also play other characters like Yoda and Grievous. There's a multiplayer setting with verses and a decent assortment of characters, cooperative missions. Episode 3 is still one of my favorite Star Wars games and definitely my favorite movie-based one. Sorry, Super Trilogy. It's coded in that early 2000s edge, but it's still immensely fun with a great level structure and addicting gameplay. There were a couple portable versions as well on Game Boy and DS. The Game Boy and DS ports are pretty much the same, the difference being is that the Game Boy had some extra missions for 2-player, and the DS had some space missions. I love the visual style of this port. It's a beat-em-up side-scroller like Attack of the Clones, except that it looks, plays, sounds, and feels better. I really love this port. It's got a fun, simple gameplay, and you experience all the beats of the film. Look, they even show Vader force-choking Padme. Damn! And the space sections were pretty fun too. Honestly, this might be my favorite GBA Star Wars game. Now, there were a lot of Flash games and mobile stuff, sort of continuation from Public Commando, but as I said, I don't really qualify those for this list. But just know that there was a lot of stuff coming out in 2005. But the last game that we're going to talk about is Battlefront II. Battlefront, now with Revenge of the Sith focus. Yeah, we all know this one, and we all love this one. One of the most enjoyed Star Wars games ever made. I have friends that don't even like Star Wars that love this game. I myself have quite the amount of hours in it, so let's start with the story. There's a tutorial set on Geonosis that shows you the new features as well as basic gameplay. There's a lot of nice additions now. You can change your class without dying, that's great, by going to the command point. You can also sprint, which is huge. Oh, and the big one, you can play as the special characters now, Jedi, Sith, or more. This was a huge addition. Basically, you get more points, you have the option to play special characters relevant to your team and your map location. Here on Geonosis, we have Windu. They each have unique abilities and a unique health bar. It depletes over time and goes down faster the more you get hit. But you can increase it by getting more kills. That's the Jedi way right there. The story mode is more of a narrative this time. We see the perspective of a 501st soldier in a rather harrowing war veteran style retelling of the end of the Clone Wars. We see the battles mentioned in Revenge of the Sith, Megiddo with Ki-Adi-Mundi, the space battle over Coruscant. Oh yeah, there's space battles now. You fly into space and try to destroy the enemy's command ship or deplete their numbers. You can do this from the exterior or go in and take them out from the inside. And there's lots of fun StarCrafts to choose from too. We go to Felucia, fight some Acklys, and then play as Aayla Secura. The implication in this game is interesting too. No inhibited chips here. These guys just knew what they were going to end up doing later. We go back to the beaches of Kashyyyk and fight on Utapau. We actually get to fight Grievous with Obi-Wan here. I screeched the first time because he jump scared my ass. And notice these are all the new maps for the game as well. Spectacular ones, I might add. Especially Coruscant, where it's time for us to execute Order 66. You get to play Anakin and mow down some Padawan Knights and Masters. Not as fun as the Episode 3 game, but it's still really cool. So we get to witness the end days of the war and the rise of the Empire.
What I remember about the rise of the Empire is how quiet it was.
And that's not the end of the game. We get a decent amount of Imperial missions too. We go to Naboo and kill the new queen, who just so happens to look like Padme. And then some more missions cleaning up the rest of the CIS. I love the Mustafar map. Or going to Commando and taking care of the rest of the clones. And then we jump into A New Hope. We've got the Death Star with the plans being stolen by the Rebels, another one of my favorite maps of this game. And the Tantive 4, with Vader killing some Rebels. You do some stuff on Yavin, and the game ends on Hoth. What's really great about this story mode is, unlike the previous game, where you just have to win, there's actually objectives for you to complete, showcasing the different game modes, like capture the flag for example, finding items and bringing them in certain areas, space battles, hero battles. There's lots of great additions here. And again, my personal favorite is the Galactic Conquest, which is so much better in this game. You've got this cool map here after picking your side. You fight for domination over the planets and ultimately the galaxy using points to get upgrades along the way. Easily the most fun game mode here. I also really enjoyed the Hero Assault on Mos Eisley, which lets you play any of the special characters and have a big battle royale. Now, Xbox players were the cool ones because they actually got DLC for this game, although on PC, you can add it with a mod. The DLC brought back 4 maps from the game, including Bespin, and 2 new special characters to play from the 2003 Micro series, Shirtless Kit Fisto and Asajj Ventress. Awesome additions. This is another case of what more can I say about one of the most beloved Star Wars games. Battlefront 2 is a near perfect experience and is best enjoyed with friends. Now, it did get a PSP port, which is pretty wild to think about, and it's actually really good. You aim with the X, O, square, and triangle buttons, and it takes a little getting used to, but other than that, it's awesome. There is some cut content because of the hardware, most notably is the story mode being absent. But we got Galactic Conquest. I did not expect the prequel era of games to be this intense. I mean, hell, there's a lot of oddities, like those plug-and-play games, and no, they do not qualify. It's an absurd era of marketing, and George knew what he was doing to make that money. Even when we covered a much smaller scale of years in this part, the content covered was double. The complexities of these games have greatly advanced, and I gotta stop the video here, because the prequels went way over expectations and how long I thought this was gonna take. So the next part will be picking up at 2006, and possibly going through the rest of the Star Wars games, as we'll see quite the decline of quantity in games post-prequels. See you there.